The NBA is dealing with another tanking problem this season. Now, the notion of tanking, nothing new in this league, but the latest edition seeing possibly more teams participating in it, even some fined for it. Here's Warriors superstar Steph Curry when asked about tanking in the association.
How many teams are tanking right now? Is it really? Yeah. Even the teams that are in the play-in chase?
The ones out.
Which that's what, how many is the third of the league, so 10 teams? Is it really that big of a problem? I'm asking. We feel like there's obviously a lot of competition. It's something I'm sure every year the NBA wants to address why the play-in tournament exists. Things evolve. Problems arise, and everybody wants to shine a spotlight on all the negatives of the league, but let's focus on the positives of how great the competition is at the top. There still is relevancy regular season-wise of the seeding and playoff chase. I know there's a conversation around how many games we're playing. That's probably where I would focus more the attention.
Joining us now for a couple of healthy conversations on the NBA and tanking, Nicole and Brad Botkin. Brad, I'll start with you, our Steph Curry and Dubs guy. To me, it seemed like Steph acknowledged it and then kind of downplayed it toward the back half of his answer there. Do you agree with Steph in terms of how he feels the NBA has a tanking problem?
Well, Steph's classic, always finding the positive in everything, which we all love about him, but there's a lot of negatives to tanking. So, yeah, I mean, he kind of downplayed the whole how many teams are it's a lot. Like when it's a third of your league that basically for the last 6 weeks of the season really have no incentive to win, it is a problem. I'm not sure it's a solvable one. So we have to be solutions oriented. We have all of these conversations, that are just purely subjective. Do you prefer a league where a third of the teams are tanking? Do you have a problem with it ethically? All these things. The bottom line is, do you have a solution? Can you make it better? There are some proposals out there from the internet sleuths and how people think they can kind of work around what some of the unintended consequences will be. But you look at this list right here, all of these teams, I mean, let's just bottom line it. They have no incentive to win a single game. For the rest of the year, every game that these teams win, short of the Pelicans, because they don't own their pick, they have no incentive to lose. Every team that owns their pick that wins a game has lost that game for the next 6 weeks. They have nothing to play for. They're not going to make the play-in. You're talking about the difference in lottery odds. There is no incentive to win. That is a problem.
No, I agree with everything that Brad is saying. And you know what? Tanking is not a new thing. It's not a new ideology. It's not a new strategy, if you will, for better lack of a word. But there used to be a level of decorum about tanking. There used to be some couth to it. You used to tank, but it wasn't so egregious as it is now. And I just think that that's where we are in the league, and that's the unfortunate part of where we are in the league, is that you have teams blatantly tanking in front of our eyes and blatantly disrespecting the product of what the NBA is supposed to represent, and that is the best league in the world. And look, the lottery, the draft, they are supposed to help build teams that are struggling. They're supposed to help teams that have been in the dark ages, whether, for being in an unsexy market or for unfortunate injuries, or their star player leaves, or they win a championship and now they're in rebuild because everyone wanted to get paid and you can only pay a certain amount of guys. The lottery is supposed to help those teams, the teams that are losing because they're just bad teams, not teams that are trying to kind of cheat the system of building out a better team by losing with the team that they currently have. That's where it gets sticky, and that is where, as someone who understands what tanking is, doesn't appreciate what it's become. And that's where I think the line is for a lot of people. It's just so blatant and so egregious, and it's really a slap in the face of what the lottery is, and like I said, what I feel like the league represents.
Two things. The biggest reason that tanking is such a slap in the face is how expensive it is to consume the product. I mean, let's be honest about that. To go to a game, 4 people, family, kids, popcorn, parking, tickets, you're dumping nearly $1,000. to go to a game.
Depending on the market.
And so,
if not more.
Yeah.
Like the Warriors
now these
could
teams
double
aren't
that.
even putting their best foot
Yeah.
forward. That's the biggest problem. Look, if you could go down to a game for $80 and it was reasonable, then maybe you catch your favorite player on the flip side when they come back. It's not like that. It's a serious investment, from the way that we pay for cable packages to the way that we attend games. You are paying for a premium product, and that's the bottom line with this. So my dad has a saying, if money's involved, somebody's going to find a way to corrupt it. And that is a fact. There is no incentive for these teams to win games. There is huge money involved. The Sixers lost 29 of 33 on the way in last year. 29 of 33. It got them VJ Edgecombe. Okay? The Mavericks lost their play-in game, didn't make the playoffs. It landed them Cooper Flagg. These are guys that will reroute the trajectory of your franchise for the next decade plus. There is no incentive to not go after it. There is big money involved. They're going to Ashley's point, we would like it if they would do the right thing, do right by their fans, but they're not going to. There's too much money involved, too much at stake, and that's where that divergence of the goal of the fan and what they're trying to enjoy and what the team is ultimately trying to achieve, it's a big problem.
And I think that when I say losing with pride, people are like, what do you mean by that? I've been a Knicks fan my entire life. I remember when the Knicks went 17
A lot of
and
losing with
60.
pride.
I remember when the Knicks went
We can let her make that
17
point.
and 65 in a season. When I tell you the Garden was still packed out because they were losing, but they were losing with effort. And that's the difference. It's one thing to be a bad team and you're losing because you don't have the pieces, you don't have the right coaching staff, you don't have the personnel, you don't have that star player, you're maybe one of the weaker teams in your conference depending on what the conference is. That's different than what we're seeing. We're seeing teams that can compete. We're seeing teams that have the pieces to compete. And when I say compete, I don't necessarily mean for a championship or a deep playoff run. I just simply mean going out there, putting your best foot forward to try to win a game, a couple of games. And they're blatantly not doing that. And that's where that's where that conversation of it being egregious comes in. Because it's one thing to not be able to win. It's another thing to choose not to win. And that's where the line is.
Yeah, and it feels like you have a good grasp of how to define tanking, because I think that's the biggest issue. If we're going to incentivize teams or de-incentivize teams to tank, first we need to figure out what exactly it is. How do you see it, Brad? You heard Ashley's description for what it looks like and how egregious it can be. What have you seen that's very clearly tanking versus just being bad at basketball?
Yeah, this is where it gets hard. Nobody in the NBA is bad at basketball. The worst teams have the very best players in the world. So they can go out and compete, and they can try to win. It's very difficult to draw a black and white line of what tanking is. It's sort of a know it when you see it situation. Like the
Jazz did was
the Jazz,
blatant.
they're winning the game, they're in a game, they're competing all game, their best players are playing, and then come fourth quarter, they're all too tired to play.
And they were fined for that too.
They were, and so that's a
$500,000.
know it when you see it.
Or sitting healthy players, relatively healthy players, and sitting them out for a game, and
Of course.
it's multiple players,
Of course,
not
but,
just one.
but as we say this right now, teams are behind the scenes working out ways to fake injuries and give legitimate injury reports. Very, very difficult to
Can't
define
prove a
what
backache,
is and isn't tanking. Again,
We
I
all
think
have a backache, right?
yeah, exactly.
Can't prove it. Like,
Yeah, he's tired. He needs
Stage,
rest.
yeah.
Who doesn't need? Who doesn't need? Who doesn't
trick.
need rest?
Right.
So I think the only way is to get rid of the incentive. Now you open up the conversation of how you do that. But as long as the incentive's there, it's sort of like when we get on teams in the off season for meddling. What do we call it when they talk to people for tampering? It's like, how do you prove? Of course, these guys are hanging out. You can't talk to guys on other teams. You can't recruit. They're playing pickup games. They're in the. Of course, they're recruiting. But how do you prove it? It's very difficult.
So interesting, Ashley, before I get to you here, we saw a graphic up there where the Jazz were fined $500K, Pacers $100K. We even had one back in 2023 when the Dallas Mavericks got hit with the fine as well.
Hefty.
Yeah. Adam Silver, though, had responded to this because you're talking about the injury report. Then there's the intentional in-game fourth quarter stuff. He said, overt behavior like this that prioritizes draft position over winning undermines the foundation of the NBA competition, and we will respond accordingly to any further actions that compromise the integrity of our games. But the question then is, Ashley, how do you determine that? Because an injury report's one thing, but as we've been talking about, you're leading by double digits, back-to-back games. You're sitting out guys like Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. in the fourth quarter. You win one, and you still get fined, as the president as President talked about?
Yeah, so the injury aspect of it gets sticky because then you're dealing with the Players Association, and there's all these rules and regulations when it comes to protecting players and protecting injuries, right? So the league's hands are kind of tied in that aspect, because if a player says that they have, say, lower back pain, yes, you can't prove that, but you also can't say they're lying, right? But I think that when something becomes repetitive, it then becomes egregious. And I think that's where the league has to make that determination. Now, you guys are all parents, so you know this. If you reward bad behavior, the bad behavior is going to continue. I have a puppy. When I was puppy training him, good behavior is rewarded with good things. Bad behavior is rewarded with bad things. If the league wants to stop the blatant tanking, they have to stop rewarding it. So they are just as complicit in what tanking has become, because teams know if I tank, whether egregious or not, because no one's going to stop me, that increases my lottery odds, which then helps me in the draft. If the league removes that aspect of tanking and says, yeah, you want to play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes. We're going to take away draft picks. We're going to lower your lottery percentage when it comes to the draft. Then teams are more inclined to actually try. And if they lose on their own accord, they lose on their own accord. But the league has to do a better job in policing this. You can't fault a team for taking advantage of a system that the league has created. They have created this system that rewards tanking and are mad at teams for taking advantage of that system.
And they try to do it with the best intentions. They try to do it with the best intentions.
Yeah.
These teams don't have avenues. The teams that we're talking about, they don't have avenues to recruit the biggest free agents. They're not the biggest markets. So they did it for the right reasons. Almost any solution that we could talk about on this set is going to have unintended consequences.
They try to disperse the talent, but it kind of backfired.
And we're going to go over potential solutions in our next block. But before we wrap up, given this freshman class that we've seen in college basketball, do you think that's a reason why we're seeing maybe more teams? Because if you have the third, fourth, or fifth, you're still going to get a top prospect in the association.
But I also think that's such a backwards ideology if you're a front office, because how many times have you seen a rookie come in and completely change the franchise in one season? You know what I mean? So it's like, what's the immediate outcome? Are you just trying to get a hold of X player for, longer down the road? Or do you think that this player is going to come in and save your franchise? Because LeBron James comes once in a lifetime. You know what I mean? Like, I think we put too much pressure on rookies to put the cape on and save the organization, and now we're a playoff team. It doesn't always work like that.
Yeah, but you still have to get the player.
Of course.
You throw these top players against the wall and you hope that yours sticks. Of course, you don't know. But yeah, you have to go and get it. This particular draft, there's some really good players. A lot of people, who knows if they'll end up being franchise changers. But in any draft,
of course,
the higher pick you have, the better chance you have of landing a better player. It's very simple. When the Warriors were bought by Joe Lacob and his group, they were bought for a little over $400 million. They're now worth over $8 billion. Because they got Stephen Curry.
Who could have been a
So
Knick,
don't talk to me about a $100,000 fine when your team went from $400 million to $8 billion. If you're going to do it, you have to sort of cut out the gray area and say, sort of like flopping. If it looks like you're flopping, we're not here to prove it. If it looks like you're flopping, you're getting called for it. So if you do anything, even if you have a rational explanation for it, if it looks like tanking, we're hitting you for millions. Tens of, you'd have to make the punishment actually suit the crime, because if a couple $100,000.
But again, you can't do that with injuries per se.
Of course you can.
No,
you can.
Now you're
You can. This is the only way you would have to do it.
The players union would have the leagues. You can't say that a player is faking an injury unless you can, without a shadow of a doubt, prove that, and that's where it gets sticky. Now, if you have a lower back injury, if you have lower back pain that lasts you 3 months, now we got to have a conversation. But you can't do that just a game out. Like, it gets very sticky with there. The Players Association would not have that.
But if it's only one game out, it's not a problem.
No, but I'm saying, like, there has to be a...
I know what you're saying,
but
the point is you'd have to err on the side of punishment.
Right, yes.
If you're in the gray area, it's like flopping. You have to err on the side of punishment. For her reasons and others, I don't think they're going to do that. So again, we arrive back at, if you're incentivized to tank, which you are, for financial reasons, for competitive reasons, your franchise is going to be worth more if you get that player. You're going to win more. There is just no incentive to go from the third worst team to the sixth worst team. There's not.
Yeah, it sounds like you both have the right idea and that it does need to be policed, but it's so hard to do it. So maybe the best step is to de-incentivize.
Now we're talking. How do you do that? So that's
well, we don't
probably
have
our
enough
next
time
conversation.
to talk about that right now. We'll go to break though, and then we'll come back out and we'll discuss a little bit more about how we de-incentivize losing, because we like to see winners here in the NBA. So our CBS Sports writer Sam Quinn has a few ideas for us, double-digit ideas. I wish we could go through all of them, but we'll talk through a couple with our NBA experts, see what they think about it. So how can the NBA fix their tanking problem? Our CBS Sports writer Sam Quinn has a few ideas here, and man, if only we had time to go through all of them. Here's 5 that might be kind of interesting. I will say that he mentioned in his article that in order to fix this, we're going to have to get a bit weirder with some of our ideas. So he scoured the internet, he asked, he went on some Reddit threads, listened to some podcasts to get some strange ideas for how to fix this problem. We got Brad Botkin, Nicole Moss here talking about how the NBA can fix. So we mentioned the problem. Now we're going to come up with some solutions. And one that our Sam has suggested is to even out the lottery odds for all teams that miss the playoffs, including those play-in teams. Brad, I can see the wheels are turning here. Pros and cons of doing that.
Well, you end up with teams being like at the fate of a ping pong ball that have no other way of getting a good player. You're making it very luck oriented. So, all of these ideas, they're not crazy. They all have logic on the surface. Some of them more than others. But there is unintended, like when they started this whole system of if you lose, you get a better draft pick, it makes sense. And it probably still makes more sense than a lot of these other ones. But there are trickle-down effects that are going to be involved in all of these. And so if you ended up flattening all of the odds, yes, you would basically de-incentivize being the worst team in the league, but you would still incentivize at the top of that box. Are you going to make the play-in or the playoffs as an 8 seed, or get your same lottery odds as the worst team in the league? So like last year, when the Mavericks could have made the playoffs and they get into the play-in game, it's like, do we win this game and get killed in the first round, or do we get ourselves into now the lottery where now we have the same odds as the worst team in the league? So you do take away some of the losing, for the worst teams because they have flat lottery odds. But the teams that are in position to get over the hump and make the playoffs, again, why would you want to do that?
And the last 2 lottery winners were teams from the play-in tournament.
That's correct.
So this would be leaning into that.
I think for me, the issue that I have with that is, or this idea, is that a play-in team is a middle-of-the-road team, usually, right? So, let's look at the Western Conference, for example, because it's not as ridden with injury as, say, the East is, which I don't think depicts the true picture of what the conference can be and usually is. The Suns are currently a play-in team. You can't tell me the Suns and the Kings are in the same position when it comes to what their roster looks like, what their future looks like. So if you're evening the lottery odds from playing down, you're still at the potential risk of rewarding a team or giving a team a higher draft pick that doesn't necessarily need it. The lottery, the draft, should help the teams that need to rebuild the most. So for me, a Phoenix Suns and a Sacramento Kings are so not even when it comes to the scale that by flattening the odds, there's a potential where Phoenix gets a higher pick than the Kings, which to me is just backwards. So I feel like that's not quite the solution either.
I do hear what you're saying there, but I don't necessarily have a problem with, the worst place to be in the NBA isn't necessarily, now this is probably because you can get a higher pick, but it's not necessarily at the bottom. The worst place to be is stuck in that treadmill of mediocrity. The middle, it's the teams there are actually one player away. Give the Wizards the top pick next year, they still stink. But if you could give the Suns, then you're actually increasing your teams that are real competitors. I do understand what she's saying, but the middle of the pack teams that are one player away is interesting.
Don't get me wrong, a rookie would definitely prefer to go to a middle of the road
Right,
team.
sure.
I always
It's
thought
a
it
better
was
team.
backwards that
Right.
like the best player goes to the worst team.
It's the draft itself. Let's talk
the draft,
about
it would benefit.
Let's
but
talk about opening up as free agents.
Nope.
That's
That is one of them. That is one of them that we're highlighting here. But along those lines of what you talked about, Brad, in terms of like more of the teams that are closer to being good and above average having a chance, because our second option here that we'll talk about is a lottery team tournament. So you're talking about teams that don't make the playoffs all the way down. And the format is something that stuck out to me. So, for instance, if you're one of the worst teams, you'd have to win maybe 1 or 2 more games, maybe 6 games to get the top pick.
You get like a bye.
Like the conference tournament. So
You're
if
the
you're
high seed.
exactly, if you're a lower seed, you have to win maybe 6 games. If you're close in the play-in tournament, you only have to win 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So then that gives a chance for the mediocre teams to get that player.
Correct.
Are you more in favor of this
is
one?
this erasing the play-in tournament? Or is this an additional tournament?
No, it's the lottery teams.
It's the
No,
lottery.
I know,
Whoever
but I'm
ends up
saying,
in
so
the
this is an
lottery.
additional
Yeah, you would
tournament?
play your play-in.
Right. And then the fallout from that then gets thrown
determine
in.
your 8 playoff teams.
Right.
And then with the teams that are left over that are now in the lottery, they play. Okay, so
You're
if
relying
we
on
do
those
this,
teams to help you get a better
if
environment.
we-
that's
if we
the
do
tricky
this
part.
next
That's the
year,
tricky
we're going to
part.
be sitting here talking, so
You're
I'm gonna
playing
play
for your
hard
replacement.
so that you can replace me.
Right,
with a better-
like that's yeah, no.
Okay, but
like,
he did
That's the
have-
con of that, but there's
But
the
also,
pros.
if I'm
Big
a,
con.
also, if I'm a player, I'm like, bro, that's a you problem. I don't work in the front office. What's this got to do with me?
That was one of the
Sam did
drawbacks
have
to
a
that.
solution to that, though. He said that the winning team, everybody on that team gets an additional player
but
option to their
super
contract.
But then you're
punitive.
kicking the can
Super
further down the
punitive.
road.
Yes.
Super punitive, but then so now you're having war of like lesser of 2 evils because like say you have
like
like
the Hunger Games.
a really crap contract on your books and it's like God, we're finally getting rid of this. It's for like some 50 million dead cat player.
And he gets another year.
Exactly. That's super punitive. Now, I mean,
And
yeah.
also, the guys who are on like super maxes
Yeah.
are like, bro, I mean, I'm trying to go to Cabo. I don't know what this is. Like, we out.
Yeah.
This is not. It's not
all
a me.
of a sudden going to try at the
Yeah,
very
this is
end
not
of
a
the
me
year.
thing, man.
Yeah, and like you said, they're kind of playing for the front
yeah,
office.
it's a
as
little too
opposed-
Hunger Games for me.
Yeah.
So
They would, yeah.
They're just
I'm a
trying to
pass.
find more games that
Yeah.
matter, but
No, I'm a
we'll see.
pass.
Let's go back to talking about some of these play-in teams, because like you said, the middle is really just the worst place to be here in this situation. So in Sam's idea, the play-in team winners would secure an extra draft pick. So you're incentivizing more teams to want to play or want to get into that play-in tournament. Ashley, what do you think about
Where's the
that?
draft pick come?
I don't know.
yeah, like where is it coming from?
That's Adam's problem to figure out.
Like 2034, you get
Yeah, like-
you get 2 picks. That would be very difficult to implement because like okay, you get into the playing game and then you get the 4th pick this year's the real one and then your extra one is
And then
like
also when
what
you-
the late 2nd rounder.
And then when it comes to trades and when you trade away draft picks and future draft picks, then can you not trade a play-in draft pick for a player?
I think the
in free
idea was if you're
agency?
kind of on the bubble of, it comes to January, February, and you're like, should I be working hard to make it to that play-in game, or should I be tanking?
so
trying to
just
get a
off the
draft
top
pick?
of my head, Emily.
Incentivizing more play.
Hey, if
just
the
on-
$500,000 don't incentivize you
Just
to
the-
play in, nothing will.
No, because we need $500,000. We need to, again, just with like finding these owners, we need to have talks not in terms of our money, but their money.
money.
I know.
$500,000.
But $500,000
I mean,
if you're a bench
yes,
guy,
if you're a bench player, but those aren't the guys that are deciding the game. The guys that are deciding the game don't $500,000.
Listen,
I mean, whatever.
if you making a couple $1 million, whatever, a free $500,000 is a free $500,000.
Of course it is, but I need LeBron to get me that $500,000. I'm not the one. Anyway, the point is here. Just off the top of my head, if I can think of it off the top of my head, then there's going to be other unintended consequences. But so now draft picks are very valuable, even for the best teams. Look, OKC, San Antonio, Houston, you guys have tons of draft capital that then you can then use in trades. You can plan for second timelines after your star fades out. The Warriors have been trying to do that for years. That's big value even if you're a good team. So now you can actually be too good because it's the play-in teams that get the extra pick. If you get the 3rd seed,
if you're in
you
the
don't have it.
bracket.
You'd actually, I mean, think about it now. Yeah. So now I don't get a pick because I'm too good. And if it's
But you
a good.
don't need it, is what they're
But
saying.
No, but everybody needs
but I
picks.
also
Everybody
think-
needs picks. If I was a 3rd seed, I'd be like, hell.
But
let's get into the play-in. I'll probably win the play-in game anyway and get an extra pick out of it.
Fair.
But I also think we're overcomplicating this. If you tank egregiously and I can prove it, I can see it.
You can't prove it.
And I
tough.
can visually see what's happening, I take your draft pick.
Yeah.
It's that simple. If you want to try to cheat the system, I'm going to not reward you, but penalize you. That would stop teams from blatantly tanking if they know that the draft pick that they're trying to get, or they will get because they're just that bad, is no longer available to them.
Yeah, but
It's
Ashley,
that
you just said that you can't. It's theory.
No. I
You
said
can't prove it.
egregiously. If it's, you have to give some level of freeway, right? Like I said, if there's a player with an injury and that injury is a couple of games here, you can't do anything about that. But we're watching players who are healthy sit down in a fourth quarter. That's egregiously tanking. I'm not only going to fine you, but if you do it more than once in a season, you are on the chopping block to lose your draft pick. It's that simple.
So what Ashley's talking about actually leads us to our last and final topic, which is like hit them where it hurts. Not money, not, for instance, $500,000, but more pick evaluation or percentages of ping pong balls. Then the question, though, which I think Brad is pointing out here, is how do you determine what is egregious?
You cannot get away from that reality.
You absolutely can.
Yes, but then teams will just find a way to not be so egregious.
But what
that tanking
that
is
may
not
be a possibility, but let's be honest about this. We have insiders, things get leaked. You can absolutely figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, say in the actual season, there's nothing that says you can't retroactively do it. There's nothing say that if there's an investigation that happens in the 2026 season, I find out that you were blatantly tanking, that doesn't affect you in the 2027 season. I'm not saying it may be an immediate response.
There's no way.
I'm saying there needs to be a response.
There's no way.
There's no way, to Brad's point, you're not always going to get it right in real time.
Yeah,
but
and that's the point. That's like the death penalty. Like, if you get it wrong, like, that's the whole point. And you're taking away your only avenue to get better because I think you might have been holding somebody out that could have played. Too much gray area.
It's not a think. We saw them play three quarters, and now all of a sudden you can't play in the fourth.
To your point, if your draft pick's on the line, maybe they stop being that egregious. Right. But tanking, really, if you do it right, is in the margins. They'll find ways to lose games. We have teams
trading for players that they know aren't going to play this season,
no,
so that they can. It's like, what are we doing again? I don't have an. Let me make this very clear. I understand that tanking is a part of professional sports. I know that there's this thing that, like, players don't tank; they have too much pride. I'm not buying it. Like, sometimes you drink the Kool-Aid and you do what's best for the team. Some guys buy into it, some don't. But we have gotten so far away from the plot. You used to see guys tank with decorum, with, like, having just some pride. There's no pride in tanking anymore. It's just blatant. It's bad for the product.
Ashley, you have too much faith in humanity. Banking on pride and ethics. Banking on pride and ethics was sort of like acting like the banks weren't going to give out dog loans in 2008 because they were incentivized to do it. They were incentivized to do it. If nobody's punishing you, you're making money by doing it. The economy's going to collapse. Like, the idea that we used to have ethics in tanking.
There needs to be a punishment, or it's only going to get worse.
I agree, but then you say that you can't have punishment unless you can 100% prove it, which you will never be able to do. So unless you're going to err on the side of punishment and say, look, even if I can't prove it, if it just sort of looks like it, I'm going to hit you pretty hard, which you don't like that either. No way to do it.
If it walks like a duck, the one we didn't like a duck, it's a duck.
The one we didn't talk about is getting rid of the draft entirely, which is a very long discussion to have.
Yep.
But that's the one that is the most reasonable.
All right. Go check out Sam Quinn's article at CBSSports.com. I'll just leave it with this as we take a look at shortest odds to win the NBA Finals. We've been talking about incentivize. Warren Buffett had a famous line, right? Show me the incentive, and I'll show you the outcome.
That is correct.
How are the Knicks fourth?